What color was his hair? What did he look like? You know, and oh yeah, and what about your house? And what about his house? And what about horses? Okay, and finally it was decided, you know, the way to bring their memory back, let's send them at church expense to the town of Nauvoo. Well, you know, you ever had a good idea and then it happens and it all crashes? Okay. Or let's say you planned a family vacation and the planning was more fun than the vacation itself. Well, this is about to be one of those events. You get these old guys back in Nauvoo, and suddenly they can't find their house. All they see are piles of bricks, here's a wall, here's this, and they can't even remember where the temple stood. Okay, finally, as they're all kind of holding a meeting down there, and an old woman from the town of Nauvoo came down to ask, what are you doing? What's going on? And one of the men said, we're Mormons. And she goes, you know, when I was a little girl, the Mormons lived here, and you're not going to believe this. This town was beautiful. And she said, won't you come back? And one man in the group claimed that he received a revelation. Yes, we will come back. And suddenly, and that Nauvoo will once again be a beautiful city. And, you know, if you, and he now speaks to the people. And the event went from, boo, this is awful, to we're going to come back and we're going to rebuild this. Well, okay, nothing happened, however. We now come to the 1930s. In the 1930s, there was a great mission president out in Chicago, which is fairly close to Nauvoo, and his name was Bryant S. Anybody name him? Hinckley. Okay, who's his son? Gordon B. Hinckley. Bryant S. Hinckley got really curious about Nauvoo, and he's a teacher by trade. He loves history, and he decides, I'm going to go see Nauvoo. And finally, he goes, I'm going to search out and figure out where the temple stood, and finally he decides, you know, I'd like to buy that temple site and give it to the church, but he doesn't have any money, but he has a rich friend. He contacts the rich friend, and suddenly the rich friend buys it, and the two go to see the church president, and they say, guess what? We're going to give you this. We'd like you to rebuild the Nauvoo temple. And the church president then, Heber J. Grant, takes these two men over to the window. He shows them the Salt Lake Temple, and he goes, you know, we don't build small temples like that anymore. Well, okay, time passes. As time passes, we come to the 1950s, and there was a man whose name is J. Leroy Kimball. And J. Leroy Kimball was a doctor by trade, and you'd say he's very well-to-do, and what he really likes, he likes church history. And, you know, I hope you feel the same, but he likes it enough that he's now reading his great-grandfather's journal, a man named Heber C. Kimball. And as he reads about Heber C. Kimball, he reads about this magnificent brick house, and he concludes, on one exciting weekend, I'm going to take an airplane back to Nauvoo. I'd love to see the house. Well, he gets back there. He figures out by looking at land records where the house stood. What he sees is a couple of brick walls. He sees, you know, everything is kind of ruined, and his conclusion was, my great-grandfather would be very embarrassed about his memory to Joseph Smith. And so he concludes, I'm going to rebuild it as my memory of my great-grandfather and his memory of Joseph. Now for this J. Leroy Kimball, he spared no expense. I don't think any of us would probably like to work for him. He wanted the bricks just right. He wanted the mortar, the kind of cement between the bricks. He wants it, you know, yeah, okay, I want it all the same, got it? He goes to Europe to get just the right carpets, just the right, you know, the drapery, the whole works. And, okay, but he finds the first summer, as he's about completed with the first story, that 11,000 people knock on his door and say, hey, what are you doing? And then they go, you know, my ancestor used to live here. finally, J. Leroy Kimball has a big idea. And he wants to spring it on his cousin. Anybody name his cousin? Okay, Spencer W. Kimball, who was then a member of the Quorum of the 12. But, you know, he has to do it just right. And so he goes to Spencer and he says, hey, how'd you like to vacation in Nauvoo? I'm redoing, and, you know, talk about a nowhere place. Well, Spencer thinks that's great. And he takes his family to a little nowhere place called Nauvoo. But, you know, he had no sooner walked in the door when suddenly there's a knock on the door. Oh, I know who you are. Bless my child, you know, baptize this person, ordain, I need counseling. And then he shuts the door and here's the next person, the next, and the next. And finally, knocking on the door is his cousin, this J. Leroy Kimball. And he says to Spencer, what do you think about this sleepy, nowhere town called Nauvoo? Well, Spencer has a lot to say, and J. Leroy Kimball said, what if we were to restore Nauvoo? In other words, restore, bring it back. What if we were to bring back the beauty, the glory of the days of Nauvoo? Well, the two men sat up all night, and they talked about, you know, well, we restored this place, and finally, the question is, well, how are we going to do it? That's going to cost a lot of money. And the conclusion was, you know, Spencer W. Kimball says, I have a friend named J. Willard Marriott. Now, you know, if you're going to have friends, they might as well be rich. And suddenly, J. Willard Marriott is contacted, other rich kind of people, and they formed something called Nauvoo Restoration Incorporated, and suddenly they begin to buy. Now, the plan was that Spencer, every time they restored one of these little brick houses, that Spencer would come and he would dedicate the house. But Spencer, in his patriarchal blessing, told about the mighty work he would do for Father Lehi's family. And so every time it's time to dedicate one of these little kind of red pop-up, you know, brick houses, you'd say, where's Spencer? Well, he's in Mexico. He's in Chile. He's in Guatemala. He's, I don't know, okay. He's, you know, you name it, Argentina. He's Uruguay. He's everywhere. And so the question is, well, he can't go out, but we need to have it dedicated. Where's an apostle this weekend that could just fly out there for us? Who's the man? Gordon B. Hinckley. Okay. And suddenly, Gordon, you go on out there. Well, okay. I've read through all of his dedicatory prayers. What's so interesting, like the bakery is now back. And you'd say it's no question it's about the baker and the baker's family. But before he finishes, he dedicates that building to who? Joseph Smith. What's your largest landmass now in the whole United States dedicated to the memory of one man? Nauvoo. And when you go there, they always talk about it, the spirit of Nauvoo. Do you feel it? Do you feel the spirit of Joseph? And so Nauvoo, once again, you know, this kind of actually really wonderful place. Well, okay, I need to get to 1998. In 1998, Gordon B. Hinckley was now president of the church. And Nauvoo is magnificent, but there's no temple. Some of you may recall, I don't know, your kids. 1998, Gordon B. Hinckley speaking at conference. He's at the last session. And the last session of conference, he stands up, he indicates, you know, hope everybody's had a wonderful time. You know, okay. But then he goes, I have an announcement. And he starts to cough. And I'm saying to myself, somebody get that man some water. You know, I'd love to hear his announcement. And suddenly, you know, he gets it back and he goes, I'd like to announce we're going to rebuild the Nauvoo Temple. So the Nauvoo Temple, during the time of Brigham Young, when it was finished, it was called the Jewel of the Mississippi. Today, up and down the Mississippi, you'd say what it continues now to be the Jewel of the Mississippi, it's Nauvoo Temple. So with that, our topic today has been Nauvoo. Let's see how we did. Nauvoo was first known as half-breed land. You know, I hate the prejudice of the whole thing. Okay, it was then known as Venus, you know, oh, she's going to be beautiful, come settle here, but they get sick. What illness? Malaria. And then it was known as commerce. You know, this is going to be, we're going to have all kinds of places where big boats come in. It's going to be industry. Okay. From commerce, it was known as Nauvoo. And then from there, it was known as City of Joseph. And now today, known as Nauvoo. You can actually, well, where are those that have actually traveled and seen Nauvoo? Oh, fabulous. Okay, the rest of you, you know, put it on your list of must-see, you know, before this life is over. You know, they put on a pageant every year called City of Joseph. And they sing songs, you know, City of Joseph, Nauvoo, you know, okay. And actually, it's a really incredible place. For me, I actually spend a lot of time in Nauvoo. I have a house in Nauvoo. You know, you can't love Joseph enough not to want to be part of, yep, here's my brick house. And it's dedicated to the, of course, memory of Joseph. Well, all right, everyone, break time, or if some of you are saying, I'm ready to take my test, you know, we'll do it. Where are you at on this?
Take a minute break.
Minute break, okay, minute break. Run the halls, scream, ask your friends, you know. And we'll see, are you feeling genius?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this test, either it's a throw out because your first test was so good, or you'd say it will erase what your first test did to you, where you go, ah! Either one, I'll take the highest score.
Oh.
Okay, so here's hoping. Okay.
The final test now, that can be comprehensive of everything, or just the new stuff after now?
Final test is comprehensive, but I'm actually going to give it to you on Monday to take home. And if you don't show up on Monday, then you can just take it in class on Wednesday.
Oh, cool.
And we'll walk through martyrdom kind of thing. So it'll just be, hopefully I get it written this week. That's okay.
Cool.
All right. Jump, find new friends. Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to take the test. Your life is
Wednesday.
yeah. So Wednesday we'll be doing actually the kidnapping of Joseph Smith, and I think you'll find it interesting. And if all goes well, we'll do kidnapping, and Joseph Smith runs for president of the United States. And
Is that your last?
no, and then we'll continue on Monday. We're going to walk through the martyrdom, and then Wednesday we'll pass in tests and kind of, you know, say what do we really learn.
I had two sisters came here together.
Yeah, so that's very fun. Hey, what a great assignment you have on the security thing to come over for the months in the summer. That's very fun.